Good afternoon. Hello. I'd also really like to thank my...
Okay, thanks, Tyler Perry.
When the trailer for A Jazzman's Blues first dropped, I can actually say that I was somewhat excited for this film. It looked like it was something completely different from Tyler Perry's previous films, where he usually copied and pasted characters, plot lines, and even jokes. This time it seemed like he tried and pushed himself creatively and took a more serious approach. Even though I had a little apprehension, I went into this movie with a clean slate and an open mind. I can say that my initial reactions to the trailer were similar to a lot of other people. Most tweets compared it to The Notebook because of the time period and the tale of forbidden love, and others announced how they're excited that Tyler Perry is doing something different. And initially I agreed with both of these points until I actually saw the movie, and I can say it's nothing like The Notebook. The plotline, characters, and story arcs are completely different. Being the first film he's ever written 27 years ago, Perry explained how A Jazzman's Blues is a passion project. I have waited a quarter of a century to tell this story, and now is the perfect time, and Netflix is the perfect partner. Lionsgate bought the rights in 2006, but for an undisclosed reason, it never panned out. When Leanne is first introduced, she is shown to be shy and quiet and naturally spends most of her time alone. Around their neighborhood, everyone calls her Bucket because her mom dumped her at her grandfather's house and hadn't come back since. What makes this plotline feel so thin is that we never know why. Did her mother Ethel hate being a mom? Could she not afford to raise her? Was she too busy trying to be in these streets and didn't want to be tied down by a child? As viewers, we never got to know or understand why. Understanding her motivations would have given her character more depth and made her more interesting than just an evil mother. Honestly, pretty much every character in this movie is paper thin, but I'll get to the rest later. 20 minutes into the film, we discover that Leanne is getting R-worded by her grandfather, and once again, what is the point? At the beginning, Leanne's grandfather Red was said to be a mean man who was overly protective of her.
She lived with her grandpa. He an evil old thing.
This was shown when Bayou tried to talk to her and Red shut him down. I understand that Perry used her being R-worded as a reason why Red wanted Leanne to himself, but I feel like there are better ways to do it. The alternative story could have been that he felt like he didn't protect his daughter enough when she was younger, and the result was her getting pregnant with Leanne. Because Ethel got pregnant at a young age, she had a hard time adjusting to motherhood, and that's why she left Leanne with her father. Him watching over Leanne could have been the way he attempted to make it up to Ethel. That's why when Red discovered that Leanne was sneaking out to see Bayou, he told the mom because he wanted to protect her, like he didn't do with Ethel. I know I just completely rewrote the entire plot point, but the way the movie set this up didn't make any sense to me. If Leanne is getting R-worded by her grandfather, I would find it hard to believe that Ethel didn't get abused the same way. If she was, that means that when she dropped off Leanne, she knew that her daughter would suffer the same trauma. That would mean that she was such an evil character that she didn't care about her own daughter's well-being. Especially because she experienced the same thing when she was young, so why would she subject her daughter to it? I do think there are characters that are irredeemable, but at least you have an understanding of their motives. A perfect example was Monique's character Mary in Precious. Even though she did disgusting and heinous things, you understand because it was implied that Mary's mom abused her as well. If this idea that the mother was abused too and she still left her daughter there, then giving her layers would create more of an understanding of her motivations. I also think this plot point doesn't hold weight in Leanne's life either. We see her getting R-worded, but we never see how it affects her. When it comes to intimacy, at the beginning she shuts down and stops their moment when Bayou says he loves her. Later on in the movie, they have sex and we never saw how she got to that level of vulnerability. We never saw her work through that trauma, and even if she didn't, it would be nice to understand how she might have negatively viewed intimacy. Like for example, how Billie Holiday had this skewed view of sex. A perfect example where this type of plotline has a deeper meaning is like Forrest Gump, where we see how what happened to Jenny affects how she moves throughout life. That's why this plot point felt like it's there just to add unnecessary trauma and to bring the shock value to the story. Another thing about her character that I feel fell flat was that she seemed to have no agency. She was just kind of there waiting for things to happen to her opposed to making things happen herself. For instance, when she and Bayou reconnected after all those years, it would have been nice to see her attempt to save his life. Once she knew they were heading towards Bayou to hang him, she just cried at the table. I know that her mom took her keys, but her feet worked too. Another example was when we saw a montage and it showed Leanne being pregnant. It skipped vital moments by doing this because we never saw her fearing for her life due to the baby not being John's. We just see her sitting at the table, big and pregnant, and then her coming to Hattie Mae's house to give birth. It would have been nice to see her stressing over the likely repercussions of being pregnant by Bayou, and her even coming up with a plan to run away if the baby wasn't white passing. A small clip of her looking for money in John's pockets and saving it in a jar would have shown that she had a plan B. It seemed like she didn't have a strong enough desire to leave and escape her situation, and there's where I feel like her character lacked. Her relationship with her husband John also felt very surface level and too straightforward. I understand that Leanne's mom forced her to marry a rich white man, but him threatening her at the table just felt so heavy-handed. The script was the problem because it was not subtle whatsoever. Besides telling her directly that he's going to drown her and K-word her, he could have been more subtle in the script. Like, for example, he threatened her, he could have given her a random gift explaining how much he loves her and don't want to lose her. Say something like, you know how embarrassing it would be if you left me, the future mayor of this town? Give her arm or wrist a tight squeeze with an intense stare, and then go off to bed. The way he was shown, he was basically playing a character of a white racist, and it felt very one-dimensional. Bayou was another character that I felt didn't get enough growth or depth. At the beginning of the film, he was shown to be the more reserved brother who was sweet and kind. When it came to family dynamics, their father made it clear that he didn't like Bayou and cared more for his brother Willie Earl. As soon as Bayou asked,
"Why him and Daddy treat me like that?"
and Hattie said,
"You don't worry about them."
I already knew where this plot was going. Bayou was not Buster's child, and once again I wonder, what's the point? This is revealed at the beginning of the movie, and it adds nothing to the plot. Buster could have treated Bayou differently because he felt like he was not as talented, and that's it. Music was Buster's passion, so Bayou not having the music gene could have been enough for him to treat Bayou differently. The only reason he was less cruel to Willie Earl was because he was a talented brother in the family. What's funny is the more I think about it, Buster wasn't needed in this film whatsoever. The story could have started off with Buster already gone and the family suffering financially because he left in the middle of the night with all their money. Because Willie was always closer to Buster, he could have left to follow him 6 months after Buster left. When he arrived in the city, their father would have already died. The whole reveal that Bayou wasn't Buster's son was once again just there for shock value. This information didn't seem to emotionally affect Bayou or assist in his character development, so it wasn't needed. Bayou didn't work extremely hard to prove himself due to always feeling inadequate because of his father or anything like that. So once again, it was pointless. Bayou's relationship with his brother Willie was also something I felt was lacking. From the beginning, Willie seemed to dislike and pick on Bayou for no reason. I'm assuming that he felt like either Bayou was his mom's favorite or simply because his dad disliked him, so he just emulated him. Even though I think this reasoning is understandable, I would have loved for their relationship to be a little bit more deeper. Maybe to add another layer to Willie's dislike, they could have really shown the favoritism between the mom and Bayou. Even if it wasn't actually favoritism, show something that could have been easily perceived that way for Willie. Bayou seemed to be more sensitive, so maybe the mother being more softer with him opposed to Willie would have shown why he has such tension and animosity with his brother. Another thing I wish was expanded on with Willie was his reasons. When he came back from traveling, he brought back Ira, who seems to be withdrawing from drugs. It's implied that Willie is on drugs too because his mom Hattie notes how much he's fidgeting. I find it interesting that we find out Ira's reason for his drug habit, but we never really know Willie's. I feel like including Ira's background story was nice and honestly one of the best scenes in the entire film, but once again, it wasn't needed. The one character's motivation that we truly needed to know was Willie's. The only thing I can see that pushes Willie to abuse drugs is the death of their father. Since he copied him and idolized him in a way, losing him could have easily pushed him to drug abuse. But none of this was explored or explained. We never get to understand why he picked up a drug habit. He just does. My biggest issue with Bayou was that he doesn't seem like a man of the times. Initially, this movie takes place in 1937, and somehow he is oblivious to the realities. When he decided to go back to Georgia, I thought it was the dumbest decision. Ira made a great point when he said he would go and get Hattie, and honestly, that makes the most sense. Him saying that Hattie wouldn't leave isn't believable either. Even if she resists change, her moving to Hopewell at the beginning of the film shows that she can be persuaded. When Bayou decides to go back to Georgia, it was kind of hard to believe a character would do something so risky and dumb like that. I don't know how much time passed from the beginning of the film up until when he came back to Georgia, but at that time, L words were still prevalent in the South. In the 1940s, there were a record of 40 L words recorded. I'm sure the true number is more than that, and I'm sure if we count other murders similar to Emmett Till, the true number would be so much higher. So for a character in the 1940s to boldly come back and spend a full day in Hopewell, take his time, shows that he truly doesn't care about his own life. If he would have snuck in at night with his band, played 2 songs, and been in and out within an hour span, that would have been more believable. Even when he decides to stop running and met a mob full of white men, he says,
Hear me out now.
"What? When in history has a mob full of white men hear a black person out, especially in the 1940s? This part was so idiotic to me and too hard to believe. I tried to dispense my belief for this, but it just doesn't make any sense. How does someone grow up in the South and don't know how racial relations work? My last plot critique is his lack of layered storytelling. When he writes, he goes scene by scene and uses certain plot points to accomplish his goal for that scene, opposed to it actually being one cohesive script. Like, let me explain. For example, when Sitsi sees Bayou on the street and she playfully jumps on his back, that was the first time I've seen them be playful with one another like brother and sister. They both work at the juke joint, and I've never seen them pushing each other or picking on each other before that scene. Something subtle like a shoulder nudge during the juke joint scene would have worked when he saw Sitsi jumping on his back. It would have made sense because that's just how they are. That's what I mean by layered. Like adding small seeds so that they can make sense later on in the film. Their playfulness was only shown in that one scene just so Leanne can get the wrong idea. This plot issue happened with a few other plot lines in the film, but this is the one that stood out to me the most. And also, I can't stand all the slaps. It was so many unnecessary slaps in this movie that I felt they were there just for dramatic effect.
Y'all, look how fake this baby is.
Now I'm gonna cut this cord, and you carry her to the white folks hospital. Tell them she had the baby there.
That baby, wow, fake.
When it comes to the production of the film, I have to discuss the elephant in the room. I understand that genetics can be complicated, but I have never personally seen a mixed black woman and a dark-skinned man create a strawberry blonde, straight hair, Caucasian baby. Another thing that isn't adding up is how at the end of the movie we discover who Hattie is and an older Leanne is revealed, and they look the same age. I could go as far to say that older Hattie looks a little younger than older Leanne. I find it hard to believe that she would be alive, but I can say this type of casting is on brand with Tyler Perry. Now I know that I've been ripping this film apart, but I do want to say that I see he's attempting to create beautiful and artistic scenes within this film. Even though I see those slight changes in the Jazzman's blues compared to his other films, it was clear that this film was rushed just like the rest of them. When I looked up the production time, he shot it within a month's time, and I can tell. The juke joint scenes would have been perfect to showcase the atmosphere and feel of how a juke joint used to be. An example that did this perfectly was in The Color Purple. The juke joint was crowded, people were sweating, and the lights were dim but natural. The place looked real and felt alive. Another scene that could have been better were the performances. I wanted to love these moments, but they were so boring to me and so uninteresting. It was not the choreography, shout out to Debbie Allen, but the setting and directing. I was hoping that the shots and editing would feel exciting like scenes from Idlewild with a dash of chaos like Great Gatsby. If Bayou is supposed to blow everyone away with his performances, I wish we could have gotten that. I can also tell other things were rushed, like editing, where he does this back and forth thing I hate, but the main thing is the actors' performances. From the other things I've seen these actors or actresses in, specifically Amira Van, I know that they are phenomenal actors who can do Emmy and Oscar-worthy scenes. The issue is, it's a director's job to not only give the performers the time and space to give their best, but they also have to be the one who pulls out the best performances possible for the film. I know this review may seem harsh, like I said earlier, and I know Tyler Perry stans are going to rip me apart, but let me explain why I made this video. What makes Tyler Perry so frustrating is that he not only doesn't want to receive any criticism or get better with his work, he gets upset and says no one lets him have a seat at the table. Now, I do think the Emmys and Oscars have a diversity problem, but I have never seen a single movie or show that he has written or directed that would ever be Oscar or Emmy worthy. I honestly think the way the Boondocks portrayed him was true, and that's why he got the episode banned. Also want to note that I wasn't going to discuss any of his movies on my page, but then he said something recently in an article, so I felt the need to talk about this. Let me be very careful on how I say this. Be diplomatic. I'm extremely excited for what's happening with diversity and the choices and opportunities that we're seeing for Black people for the first time. It is amazing. But I worry that there is such a push for diversity and push for hiring people of color that I found situations that there are people being pushed into seats they are not ready for. At Tyler Perry Studios, we brought people in and they do an amazing job, but as soon as people are trained and they know the job, they're snatched up to go to some bigger production, which is fine because if they want to find people who know their job, they can make it at my studio, they can make it anywhere. Okay. What I don't want is to have Black people in seats that we weren't ready for, and then have people that are not Black that were moved out of those seats. If we didn't get qualifications, the teaching, or the education to get there, then how are we given the seats so quickly? It's my hope that in all of this change and this push for there to be more inclusion, we're also providing time and training to make sure we can do a great job. So basically he's saying Black people who have a seat aren't ready for it. He's also saying that those Black creators who aren't ready in his eyes are taking up the seat a white person can have. I strongly disagree. I don't care if it's a creator's first attempt, second attempt, or third attempt. If a Black person has a seat, which we've been fighting for years, I think we should support that. On one hand, I think it's funny because looking at Tyler Perry's work, it's clear that he does not have the film education or film eye to make an award-winning film. The mistakes he makes time and time again are things I've personally learned in film school from years of analyzing film and story structure on my own as well. I think that's truly sad to hear because I see other creatives like Issa Rae and Debbie Allen continue to put on Black talent so that everyone can shine. I feel like a lot of white filmmakers get to fall up, so why is he holding this specific standard for us? There's plenty of white nepotism babies that get a seat at the table and have everything handed to them. His statements feel like the crabs in a barrel mentality, and I strongly disagree with him. I know that he's the only one who writes his shows and movie, and it's always very clear because it's never well done. In another article, he even explained how it was hard to get up-and-coming actors for his film because of his negative critical reputation. Unfortunately, with this film, I went to a bunch of up-and-coming young artists who were getting a lot of attention and asked them about doing this role. They read the script, they loved the script, but I think there was a reservation or hesitation about working with me in particular on this film because I guess they didn't know how it would turn out. Basically, he's saying they've seen his previous work and seen the quality of his work, and it's a hard pass for them. I know that his goal for this film was to be taken more seriously as a filmmaker and hopefully get nominated, but honestly, it won't. I know someone is going to say, who says he wants an award? I know he wants a Jazzman Blues to be taken more seriously because he premiered the film at the Toronto International Film Festival weeks before it was released on Netflix. I haven't watched and enjoyed a Tyler Perry movie since A Family That Prays. I appreciate his business sense and his rag to riches story, but I've never been a fan of his content. From character development, story structure, and even the cinematography, it's very hard for me to sit and enjoy the movies and shows he creates. I always put creators into 3 categories. One category is the creatives who do it for money, the creatives who do it for the art, and the ones who are lucky enough to get the best of both worlds. Tyler Perry falls into the first category because his work is strictly there to garner money. I also think it's upsetting how he views other Black creatives, so that was my main reason for making this video. And I really did have hopes that a Jazzman Blues would be a little bit better and show a little bit of growth in his creativity. And just to be clear, I think there's nothing wrong with Tyler Perry being more strictly money motivated, because hey, there are plenty of Michael Bays out there. Where things get muddled is when the movie-driven creative expects awards and accolades that are usually reserved for the more artistically driven works. I want to say thank you for watching. The articles I referred to will be in the description section. Please like, share, and subscribe. Let me know what you think. Bye!
Typical Winston Jerome story starts with a beautiful, educated, professional black woman trapped in a troubled marriage with a brown-skinned bald dude from Law & Order.
How can you do this to me? Get out. I'm gonna marry this white hussy because you are too virtuous and strong and might make me a better man.
Then, a dude who looks like Shamar Moore shows up as the shirtless, light-skinned gardener who just got out of jail.
Excuse me, may I rake your leaves?
At first, she acts like she doesn't like the light-skinned gardener, but eventually she gets to know him and sees a sensitive side.
Now, I know that to you, I'm just a poor, light-skinned gardener who can't even afford a shirt. But I love me some Jesus, and I love me some you.
Oh, Lord, thank you, Jesus. I never thought I'd ever be with a man so loving and light-skinned.
And I will always be light-skinned just for you.
Being a good Christian woman, she gives her marriage one last chance because Jesus said so.
I am dark-skinned and bald, so I hate you and I hate Jesus.
And just when the brown-skinned dude from Law & Order is about to hit her, here comes the shirtless gardener.
Hold it right there, bald-headed dude from Law & Order.
The woman and the gardener kiss, having found true love through Jesus.